Jack, what are you playing?
Batman!
Batman, and what have you just done?
This was me, aged 4, a clamshell console in my hands, immersed in a world of Mario, Pokemon and Pico chat. And now, 14 years later, it's time to bring it back to life.
Okay, so although I am going to demonstrate how you can mod your console in this video, I really don't recommend using this video as a tutorial for modding your own console. The process of jailbreaking consoles like this one changes all the time, so I really recommend you use a written guide instead. The one I recommend using is dsi.customfirmware.guide. I'll leave a link to that down below. The website constantly updates when new methods come out to mod the consoles, so it just makes your life a lot easier. With that being said, let's get our console modded. The console that I'm going to be using is the DSi model. Original DS consoles didn't have a firmware, so in order to mod those, you're going to have to use a flash card such as the Revolution 4. If you are picking up an original DS in hopes of modding it, then I recommend you get either the DSi model like I have here, or the DSi XL. The DSi and DSi XL do have firmware built in, so we can mod them using an SD card. The main custom firmware for the DSi is called Twilight Menu++. It's an all-in-one app that lets you run all your games, emulators, basically just all your hacky DS stuff. However, to get Twilight Menu to launch when we turn the console on, we need to take advantage of a bootcode exploit called Unlaunch. Unlaunch basically gives us full control over the console. To install this, we need to take advantage of a vulnerability in the DSi camera app. The best part of this is, it works on the latest firmware, and it works on all of the DSi models. This might sound a little bit intimidating, but I promise it's really not as intimidating as it sounds. To begin, we need to open the camera app on our DSi and open the album. At this point, you want to have your SD card inserted into the console so that the DS can create any folders we need. Here, we need to take note of whether or not we have a Facebook logo at the top. Then we simply download the memory pit exploit depending on whether we did or didn't have the Facebook logo on our console. We simply drag these files into a folder onto our SD card, into the directory that the guide gives us, and then reinsert the SD card into our console and turn it on. Okay, so now for the fun part, actually launching the exploit. To do this, open the camera app, navigate to the SD card screen, and open the album using the large button on the right of the display. If everything went well, your screen should flash magenta. And now we're in Twilight Menu++. Although this app is now running on our console, it will disappear after the console is rebooted, so we still have some work to do to get it to be permanent. To do this, we need to install Unlaunch, the bootcode exploit I talked about earlier. As Unlaunch is going to modify the firmware of our console, it's a good idea to make a backup of our console in case anything goes wrong. This is known as backing up the NAND. Luckily, there is an app to dump our NAND called Dump Tool. To use it, we simply drag the dumptool.nds file onto our SD card and insert it back into the console. Boot into Twilight Menu using the camera app again, and press A on the Dump Tool app. Once the app is open, press A, and it will begin backing up your NAND. At this point, I like to copy everything from my SD card to a safe space on my computer. Now that we have our backup, we can install Unlaunch so that we can get Twilight Menu to load on the console's boot. To do this, download the latest version of Unlaunch and extract the unlaunch.dsi file onto your SD card. In Twilight Menu, select and launch the app called Unlaunch DSi Launcher. Once it's opened, select the Install Now option. And once it's completed, you have successfully modded your Nintendo DSi. All that's left to do is to configure Unlaunch to load Twilight Menu when we turn the console on. To do this, turn off your console, and turn it back on whilst holding the A and B buttons together. This will launch the Unlaunch file menu. Navigate down to Options, and select the No Button option, then select Twilight Menu. Select Save and Exit, and then turn off your console. Now when we turn on our console, it will boot straight into Twilight Menu, eliminating the need to use the camera app to launch the exploit. If you've got this far, then congratulations, you've successfully modded your DSi. Okay, so that's all the boring stuff done. our console is now modded and we can begin loading on our homebrew games and all of the fun stuff. Let's start with running our good old DS games. All DS and DSi games are packaged into files known as .nds files. Once we've legally acquired our .nds ROM files, we can open the folder called ROMs on our SD card, find the NDS folder, drag in our ROMs, and we're done. It's that simple to load and play your backed up games. The best part about being able to run ROMs like this is that we have no region lock restrictions, so we can run games that our console could never run before, such as exclusives from Japan like Yakuman and Nintendogs, Shiba Inu and Friends. My favourite. Something I found very interesting is that there are actually some games that were never released to the public that we can now play. For example, McDonald's in Japan actually used the Nintendo DS as a training device for their employees. This game was known as the E-Crew Development Program, and thanks to community contributions, we now have a full copy of the game that has been fully translated to English. There's a really cool community built around this training software. I'll leave some details below if this interests you. Today's video is sponsored by JLC PCB. JLC PCB is the cheapest and best way to get your PCBs printed professionally. They offer lots of customization on PCBs, including the colour of the silkscreen, thickness of the boards, and lots of other things that you need to make your PCB perfect. They offer a top-notch quality service at low, affordable prices. They also offer 3D printing and CNC machining, making them the perfect solution for all of your project's needs. Go to the link in the description below to get your PCBs professionally printed today. Big thanks to JLC PCB for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. Next, let's move on to emulation. We can emulate lots of consoles, including the Game Boy, NES and SNES and much more on our DS. We can't run these games by default, so we have to install emulators specific for each console. Luckily, the Twilight menu has loads of emulators built in for consoles like the NES, SNES, and Game Boy Advance models. To install ROMs, for example a Game Boy game, we simply download, rip our own game cartridge, and copy the .gba game file into the GBA folder into our ROMs folder. Once the ROM has been loaded through the Twilight menu, it will automatically select the best emulator for that console and launch the game. I've tested a lot of these emulators and I haven't ran into issues with any of them. I managed to get some Sega games running as well as some Game Boy games. Having this many games from this many generations of consoles is something really cool to see. Next, let's talk about ROM hacks. ROM hacks are community-modified versions of original DS games that have been modded with new features and functionalities. For example, there's a modified version of Super Mario Bros. That adds a whole new range of levels and assets. It's honestly that well made that I think most people would believe this is a Nintendo official game if you showed them this running. Most ROM hacks are installed via patches known as X-Delta files. Due to legality, modders cannot distribute already modded versions of these games, so you'll need to install the patch to your own dumped copies of the games. Some modders have their own dedicated websites where you can upload your ROM and they'll apply the patch for you, whilst others just provide the X-Delta files themselves. Luckily, the Hack64 website has a web patcher where you simply upload the ROM and the patch files, and it will make a modified ROM for you. Once you've patched your own ROM, you simply copy it to the SD card, just like you would a legitimate DS game, and it runs perfectly. Some of these mods feature more serious content like Mario Kart tracks and characters, whilst others are a bit less serious. For example, this Mario Kart mod lets you play as Shrek, and it also features sounds for the characters you're using. There are loads of these mods available online for free, and some of them even provide translation packs for games that were not meant to be released in English. So now we can enjoy games that are completely out of our region and language barriers. I think it's really important for our consoles to truly feel like they belong to us and us only. And in my opinion, personalizing your console is the best way to do this. Luckily, we can personalize our modded DS using themes. There is a website full of themes made by the guys over at ds-homebrew.com. They have themes ranging from simple colour changes to themes to make your DS look like the original NES. My favourite theme is called Vaporwave. I don't really know how to describe it. It's sort of like a purple retro aesthetic, but I think it looks really clean. I'll leave a link to all these themes in the description below. There are honestly pages full of these things, and you can even make your own. I found a really cool channel, so I'll also leave a link to that below. There are some cool videos on there on how to make your own themes. And those are all of the features of a modded DSi which I found to be most interesting. If I covered everything a modded DS could do in this video would probably be about an hour long. There are pages of homebrew apps to download for free on the internet, such as this video player that I found. I'll leave all the links down below for everything I've shown in this video, as well as the pages you need to explore all of the different community-made apps and games. This console will always have a place in my memories when I think about my younger self. For me, it set the foundation of my first experience with technology. And making this video really got me thinking about how much things have changed since then. Over time, the shift was so gradual that I don't really think any of us noticed. Now, our technology just feels different. It's not just about playing games with a friend on the living room floor. It's apps that make us compare ourselves to each other, and endless scrolling that makes us feel empty. Of course, there's so much good in the technology that we have today. We can share our creativity, communicate with loved ones from across the globe, and build communities of people that we otherwise would have never met. And don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for all that. But I can't help but feel that something's been lost. The joy of just being there, in the moment, huddled around a tiny pocket-sized handheld. Although I appreciate the technology we have today, there's something to be missed with the simplicity of what we used to have. And although we can't go back to that time, revisiting these old devices gets us pretty damn close. And that's not something I'm willing to give up.